Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shob. On the program tonight, the attack and gang rape of a child in Hyderabad. Minute by minute details of how educated kids of well-known politicians planned and brazenly attacked the victim in broad daylight. This is one of the sickest cases one has heard of. How was there no fear of the law? But first, these details of how it actually all transpired. This is what the police have revealed. Two of those accused are the sons of TRS politicians, two are sons of AIMIM leaders. Could it be that these political connections made them feel that they could brazenly get away with something like this? There are a total of 6 accused in custody, including 5 minors. The survivor in this case, a teenage girl, faced 6 hours of horror. She was eventually gang raped in broad daylight. It began at 1:10 in the afternoon when the survivor reached a pub for a party that afternoon. Her attackers, all minors, started misbehaving with her. At about 5:40 p.m., deeply uncomfortable with what happened, the young girl left the pub. By which time, the accused in this case planned and conspired to gang rape her. They got to the girl, put her in a vehicle. A video, in fact, has now emerged of what transpired in one vehicle. Release of that video by a BJP leader, incidentally, and we'll be discussing this, is entirely illegal. She was eventually shifted to a second vehicle where she was gang raped, allegedly by 5 of the accused. At 7:30 p.m., they left her outside the same pub. How could this happen? Were these boys so brazen because of their political connections? The Hyderabad gang rape, the 6-hour horror, those were the sequence of events. On the program tonight, Divya Spandana joins us, the former Lok Sabha MP and member of the Congress. N. Ramchandra Rao, BJP Executive Committee member, joins us as well. We are also joined by Ravula Sridhar Reddy of the TRS, Dr. Amit Sen, who is a child and adolescent psychiatrist, one of India's leading, Flavia Agnes, a women's rights activist, and Trisha Shetty, the activist and founder of She Says. Thank you all very much for being with us this evening. Divya, let me come to you first. We'll discuss the brazen nature of this, this attack in just a moment. But first, the sick politics surrounding this case. Social media abuzz initially with comment focusing on how the vehicle used was a Waqf board leader's car. The focus was on the Waqf board leader, not on the crime. Isn't it awful that there are those who wish to see even rape through a communal prism?
Yeah, that's right.
Divya,
are you asking me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. All the time we focus on laws, stringent laws, death penalty, etc. Hyderabad has passed.
No, one sec, Flavia, 1 second. I wanted to ask that question to Divya. Divya, can you go ahead, please? Divya, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
I agree with you, Vishnu. I think it's awful and it's extremely unfortunate that every time there is an incident like this, it becomes a political slugfest. The crime itself is kept aside and everyone else gets into, oh, he did this and he's involved and things like that. And I think for the victim, the survivor and the family who've already had a harrowing experience, it becomes all the more magnified. And I think especially in an incident like this, which is so sensitive, that things should have been handled more sensitively. But unfortunately, this is what happens. Every time it becomes a political slugfest.
Mr. Ramchandra Rao, the BJP MLA, Raghunandan Rao, is alleged to have shared visuals from the car which showed a boy apparently, intimate with the survivor at a press conference. Isn't this entirely illegal? I mean, he's been booked, but how could this have been allowed to happen at all?
I would agree to this point if had it been the first person to bring it out. In fact, the question is that how Mr. Raghunandan Rao got it. I definitely feel that it was circulated earlier in many social media, and then he got of all this evidence with him. And whenever he showed this to media in press conference, I'm sure the victim's identity was not disclosed and it was not able to be identified who is the victim.
No, but you showed that video. How could any responsible leader show a video? He's been booked under section 228, that's disclosure of identity of the victim of certain offences. Does
not only
a BJP leader, a literate person, not know what he is doing? There is a teenager involved in this case.
No, exactly. When it is not only under section 228, but even under POSCO
Yes,
Act
exactly.
23. Yeah. Even media or any person should not disclose it. But what we feel that the MLA has disclosed it because the identity of the victim was not clear and it was not visible. So therefore, he gave it to the press. Because the question is now, why he disclosed? Because the DCP earlier, he had a press conference. He said that none of the MLA's son is involved. Then he said that no politician is involved. So therefore, the
Did he not
case
think
may be
about the
sidelined.
victim, or was he only interested in making a political point?
No, definitely it is not a political turn. It is a very sensitive matter, very important
So then
matter.
he
that
was
the
trying
police-
to prove that a political leader of another party, their child, was involved in this, and that had not been disclosed. But what about the identity of the victim in this case? Did he not
Definitely,
think about that?
definitely-
Or was it, your
Definitely
son
identity
from
is not
another party
disclosed.
was involved, and that, aren't we
Definitely identity
thinking
is
about
not
the wrong thing
disclosed.
over here?
I have seen those clippings. Identity of the victim is not disclosed at all. Even I will object to it because I am myself a lawyer.
That's not what the police have
I
booked him on.
definitely will condemn this. But
That's
it is
just
it
not
is
good enough,
disclosed at
sir.
all.
You don't show these videos. And anybody in the media who has, that's entirely wrong. And I believe there are journalists also who may have been booked in this case. Mr. Ravula
Definitely,
Sridhar Reddy,
yeah.
2 accused sons of TRS Netas, 2 sons of MIM Netas. Do you believe they felt that they were powerful enough to get away with this?
Definitely, they are powerful enough because
No, one
what
second. I
changes-
just wanted to go across to Mr. Ravula Sridhar Reddy. Sir, go ahead.
Absolutely nobody can get away with this because the government is very much strict and we are serious about this. It's an unfortunate event and already the Home Minister has advised the police, instructed the police to go without any biased approach. They have already taken the accused. I cannot even call them accused. If you go by the Supreme Court guidelines, they should be called CCL, Child in Conflict of Law. And one major is there. They have taken into custody. They have been sent to the juvenile homes. And one major was taken into custody today with the court's permission for 3 days for the further investigation. The question here is, the government is not trying to protect anyone. We don't have any business in police activity.
No,
Police
but
is
Mr. Reddy, I understand you're not trying to protect anyone, and if that's the case, then that's absolutely welcome. I'm just trying to ask you about your opinion on the brazen nature in which 5 of these boys are associated with political leaders. These are our leaders. They are supposed to influence people in the right direction across the country. They are all educated. These boys are all educated. They did not know the meaning of the word consent. How does that reflect on their families?
To a certain extent, I agree with you. Definitely, political leaders are looked up to for various things by the general public. We are supposed to stand, ideal in many aspects of the life, even in the public life. So definitely, yes. But in this case, the unfortunate incident has already happened. So police has taken right steps to take them into custody. But here, as you was asking Mr. Ramchandra Rao, the BJP MLA, who was responsible enough in the society equally, would have gone to the police if police is not taking right steps for the investigation or trying to protect somebody. Even without showing the videos in the media, you can go and appeal if the concerned SHO or
No, I
ACP
agree.
is
There are 100 channels of appeal in this. So why didn't you, Mr. N. Ramchandra Rao, go to the, why didn't the BJP leader in question over here go to the NCPCR, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights? Why didn't they lodge an FIR separately? There are so many questions over here that, this BJP leader in question could have done. Mr. Ramchandra Rao,
State government
it
police,
was
state
just meant to
government
score
police.
a political point. There is a child being raped and a political point is being scored.
No, they definitely, because the political party leaders, children are involved in it. So therefore, because of that only, we have our own apprehension that because of the
No, but
political
is this
pressure,
the way to
the
have
case
done
may
it,
be
sir?
diverted.
Aren't you, your priority or the priority of the gentleman in the BJP who released this, isn't his priority to the victim?
Our
Or is his priority to secondarily look at his son is being protected or her son
our
is being
priority is to
protected?
get justice to the victim. Our priority is to see
Right.
that the
And was that
investigation
done,
goes
sir?
on the right line. Our priority is not politics. Our priority is to protect the girl. Not only protect the girl, our priority is to have a deterrent action so that this type of thing doesn't repeat in future. That was our priority. Definitely, our press conference, it doesn't mean that we are making we are only expressing our apprehension. We are trying to show the police and the society that yes,
you're trying to mislead
who are involved. And they may be sidelined. They may be helped by the
Mr. Ramchandra Rao, 1 second. Ravula Sridhar Reddy says that you're trying to mislead people.
That's what we said.
Mr. Ravula Sridhar Reddy, go ahead, sir.
I am very sorry. Even at this juncture, Mr. Ramchandra Rao is trying to mislead the people. Initially, BJP tried to pull in the name of Honorable Home Minister of Telangana State, which was never the case. They tried to name the Honorable Home Minister's grandson. Then it became, he was never there. And see, initially, police spoke. After that, the investigation happened. My question is, you being a legislator, the legislator himself is an advocate, only to score a political point, only for political mileage. Now, to cover up the MLA's mistake, Mr. Ramchandra Rao is again trying to mislead the people. You know POCSO case, you know POCSO Act, you know Juvenile Act, you know everything. How can you go without complaining? You have system. You can go to judiciary. If police is not acting properly, you can go to human rights. Anywhere you can go. There is a lay-down system before you.
Mr. Ramchandra Rao, respond to that.
They are claiming that they have not shown
the leader didn't follow the system.
As Ramchandra Rao said, earlier there were no videos in the social media, excepting the car videos which were going around. They have no video has shown any girl or any, whoever are accused in this case. Here they have blatantly tried
how it came to the hands of
Mr. Ramchandra Rao. Respond.
It is bad.
Mr. Sridhar Reddy should answer that the DCP's press conference wasn't misleading. He said that there was no involvement of any political leader. He said so. So therefore, because of that, our MLA was forced to show, because otherwise it will be the entire investigation will be sidelined. That was our apprehension. So maybe that the subsequent course of action,
trying to cover up
or the police should have called me for evidence. Instead of calling me for getting the evidence, they have booked a case against me. So how is this? What is the role of the state government and the state police?
All right, both of you, I'll come back to you in a moment. I just want to go across. We'll come back to this point in a few minutes. Trisha Shetty, this is another thing which is awful. Victim shaming. Again, where else on social media, on Twitter, where many people have criticized the girl and the girl's father for allowing his daughter to go out, and the survivor herself for apparently taking a lift or wearing a skirt. Is it not bizarre that willy-nilly in our system, the victim becomes the culprit instead of those who assaulted her?
I wish, there's always this desperation to look for a perfect ideal victim, right? It's not looking and scrutinizing the offender and understanding what are the failures within our system that lead to these crimes of abuse against women. We always want to know, what did a survivor do just before the assault that could have prevented her from getting assaulted? I just want to talk about systematic failures here, and many come to mind. One is the Women's Safety Helpline number does not work across India. Two is, what is the kind of investment and of resources from the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao fund that has gone towards gender sensitization in schools, to have conversations on consent, to teach our young boys on what it means to gain consent, seek consent, to sensitize people about the laws. Where has the kind of resources gone? Also, I must say, just within the constraints of this debate, I'm very perturbed that the representative from BJP talks about how he has access to this video. It is a crime, sir, and you would notice as an advocate, consumption, distribution of any video where a child is engaging in any sort of sexual act, of course without her consent or even with her consent, is a crime. So the fact that you on national TV feel emboldened to say, I have seen this video and I know her identity is not revealed, it perturbs me greatly. So it all comes back to the fact that our political leadership continues to fail us, Vishnu, regardless of which leadership we are looking at, which party, because they don't want to put money in strengthening infrastructures. You see how the system is when we go to police stations, when we go to, the courtrooms, when we go to hospitals. I will tell you, it's abominable the way victims are constantly re-victimized. And the sad reality is, it's always people from lower middle class and poor backgrounds that do report these crimes. People from the highest structure of the society do not. So yet again, you see people from the lowest strata of society who are constantly blamed for daring to fight for justice, and our political leadership constantly failing us and not being transparent about where the money is going that is supposed to be directed towards ensuring women and children's safety.
I couldn't agree more. Dr. Amit Sen, does this, again, just what Trisha was talking about, the idea of consent, why do you see this even among educated children of well-to-do parents in good schools, or for any school for that matter, is the idea of consent entirely alien to a large number of adolescents?
Yes, absolutely, Vishnu. I think the points that Ms. Shetty made were extremely valid, and I do think that this incident is the tip of the iceberg. There are many such incidences that keep happening amongst young people, which completely go unreported, unnoticed, because of the shame and the stigma, because the victim, for fear of what happened to this little girl, usually would actually withdraw, and the parents would actually feel so defensive and so vulnerable in these moments, they would not have the courage to even come out and talk about it. So we must talk about systems. We must talk about what's happening in schools, what's happening in families, what is happening with the education of young people as they're growing up. What about education about sexuality, gender sensitization, about transgression, about crossing boundaries? Many of these kids who are growing up, despite their educated backgrounds in highly patriarchal societies, actually see women getting oppressed, and they think that it's a right on the women's body, their personal space, and there is nobody to say otherwise. And unless we are able to actually invest our funds, our resources in a systematic way, at different, I think we're all stakeholders here. It's not the policymakers alone. It's not just the parents. It's not just the school, but we are all in it. And I think these kind of people, young people who act so brazenly are a product of what we are as a society. It is a reflection of what we hold as values or what we don't have, right? And that's where we have to begin. We have to begin at the grassroots and begin to address these systems that are really badly damaged.
Sure.
And if we don't take cognizance of this and only bank upon punitive justice, which is what Mr. Rao said, deterrent action. We have had the POCSO. How many times would you make deterrent action to some of those kids of rape cases, which get highlighted in media?
Yeah.
What about tens and thousands of people and young people who get affected by it? We have to address those,
Yeah.
And for that, only deterrent action is not going to work. We have to look at it much more closely and look at its systemic changes.
Flavia Agnes, there are those who call for life in jail without any chance of getting out for the accused in this case, even though they are minors, most of them. The police have pointed to POSCO and 20 years minimum behind bars. How would you respond, ma'am, to those who say that most of those involved were children? How do you, as a lawyer and an activist, weigh leniency with the need for legal action?
That's a very tricky question, in fact. The Juvenile Justice Act protects a minor from extreme punishment like death penalty or life imprisonment. But when cases like this come up, and when a victim is on trial, and such a public shaming has happened, and if there is no action, I think it's going to send a wrong message. So we need to be extremely alert about it, and we need to look at the law much more closely. But as the previous speaker said, it is the entire system that is so rotten. Politics is rotten, courts are rotten, police stations are rotten, hospitals are rotten. There is entire rottenness that is happening. But more important, the media message that goes out that girls who visit pubs are easy prey, and anybody can prey on them. If you're wearing a skirt, if you're seen in a pub, then you are public property. And I think somewhere our media, our films, our social milieu has to have a different image of women. And unless we arrive at that stage, these things are going to happen. Because we had this Disha law in Hyderabad, and it was supposed to act as a deterrent. But that does not act as a deterrent because of the leniency of the law. Unless we act at every stage, at the initial stage itself, in schools, in colleges, with the young people, we will not be able to change any of this.
Sure. I just wanted to go across to Divya for one final comment. You know, maybe these children would have been very small, but when the entire Nirbhaya case happened, it was highlighted as a tragedy beyond words. All of the parents of these children would have heard about it, would have known about it, would certainly know about the change in laws, would certainly know about the consequences of, you know, of if you broke the law. And yet something like this happens. I just want your views on, has anything profoundly changed, no matter how often we talk about it?
You know, Vishnu, I don't think it matters to which strata of society you belong to.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, I do think that people from influential families, they think they're above the law and they can get away with anything because they're raised in an environment where, you know, they see parents and family wield power. But what I'm trying to say is, I think this mindset, the way women are perceived in society, that has to change. It's not like we don't have stringent laws and people are not aware of the law, but crimes still happen. And I think that's because the way women are perceived as weak, as inferior, easy targets to be taken advantage of. And until this mindset changes, I think this will not be the last rape incident to happen in India.
In fact, there have been several other, I think 3 other rapes of minors in Hyderabad itself since this particular case took place. I mean, how awful is that? We can only highlight 1 or 2 cases that come, you know, to the fore. The numbers would be truly shocking. Look, I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us. Perhaps we need to keep politics aside for something as profound as this. Lots of comments coming in on Ku. Tushar writes in, says, were VIP kids not aware about the huge consequences of this act of horror? Anmol says a strict action is required so that even VIPs think 100 times before committing any act of horror like this. Couldn't agree more.